All right, I'm unmuted. I don't want to be here. I have work to do. I have to keep coming on here because we have so many morons in the media who just continue to carry water for lying politicians who are trying to sneak one over on the Palisades and Altadena. Now, we've covered this a few times. Spencer Pratt, who lost his home in the Palisades Fire, he's been attacked very unfairly by the LA Times. And now ABC7 has joined in the fray of totally misrepresenting him and completely misrepresenting what's happening with legislation following the Palisades Fire. Dude, these people do not care. They just lie. So let's go ahead. I'm going to show you this video, and then we're going to pick it apart. All right?
Rebuilding certainly tough enough after the devastating wildfires, but in addition to the usual hoops residents have to jump through, a lot of folks also battling rebuilding fears.
And some of those fears are being stoked by two new bills working their way through the state capitol. New at 5 Eyewitness News reporter Josh Haskell has details on that legislation.
It was scary. It was very scary for a lot of us.
Pacific Palisades resident Sue Cole is rebuilding, but she's still haunted by what happened on January 7th and how difficult it was to evacuate. So it's not surprising that when it comes to rebuilding, residents don't want to increase the amount of people who live in the Palisades.
The idea of increased density in our town is a big problem.
Okay, this is important. Increasing density in a fire zone should be completely unthinkable, right? They just showed that logjam of all these residents trying to evacuate down Palisades Drive. And then they all foolishly left their vehicles and took their keys with them. A lot of them took their keys with them. And so those vehicles are now inoperable. And they had to get LA County bulldozers to clear them out. Now, imagine that with 20,000 more residents, because you've now got multi-stack, low-income, high-density housing scattered throughout the Palisades. And they don't have vehicles because all of this development is oriented around mass transportation. How are they going to get out? How are they going to get out? So they want to build a whole bunch of high-density housing in the Palisades centered around mass transit, right? So they want to stack high-density housing right around bus stops. How are these people going to get out when there's the next fire, which is inevitable, right? It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Think about that. Let's continue.
Pretty much for everybody. Nobody wants to go through that once in their lifetime, let alone twice.
That trauma has seeped into two bills making their way through the state legislature in Sacramento. One of the bills, SB 549, had to be paused after misinformation was spread on AI platforms. Reality TV star and Palisades resident Spencer Pratt posted this on TikTok.
I don't even think this is political. This is just like a common sense post.
SB 549 was authored by State Senator Ben Allen, who represents Pacific Palisades. The bill, which will be worked on and taken up again next year, has a goal of helping people rebuild better, creating an authority that would cut red tape.
That other language that was in the bill refers to financing. It's a voluntary financing program for transit-oriented development, that kind of thing. It refers a couple times to density. People saw that and they saw the authority and they thought, oh man, this is all about trying to increase density in the Palisades. That was never what was going on.
Bullshit. Now, dude, these people are so sneaky. You do not hate them enough. This guy does not represent the Palisades, right? He may be their representative. He does not represent the Palisades. We went over this, okay? So this dude's bill, 549, it references existing legislation that is transit-oriented legislation, SB 375. Okay, so this is existing legislation that's transit legislation, but the transit legislation requires, look here, it contains certain mandatory elements, including a housing element. That's what he's not telling you. So he tries to gaslight you, say, oh, and look at his face, dude. He's so casual, like, oh, God, he's got this concern troll face. Oh, my God, I hate these people. And he says it's just a transit bill. What he's not telling you is this transit bill has a mandatory housing element. And beyond that, this mandatory housing element requires the rezoning of sites to accommodate 100% of the need for housing for very low and low income households. This is a transit bill that his bill is subjugated to. So he is BSing you when he's saying, oh, this is transit stuff. Oh, it's just transit. Do you see how they continue to do this? You see how they continue to do this? Now, we covered this. Here, this Palisades rebuilding bill that Spencer Pratt has been calling attention to, and he got it crushed. They are subjugating the entire bill to this. The planning and zoning law requires certain mandatory elements, including a housing element. The existing law requires the housing element to identify the existing projected housing needs of all economic segments of the community. That means homeless drug addicts. The Palisades is required to consider homeless drug addicts for the rebuilding. The existing law requires the program to identify actions that will be undertaken to make sites available to accommodate various housing needs, including, in certain cases, the rezoning of sites to accommodate 100% of the need for housing for very low and low income households. This is existing legislation. It already exists. And so what they're able to do is they can launder all of this dirty crap into that new Senate bill by simply never saying this explicitly in that Senate bill. They just reference this. It's like a hyperlink. And there's two hops. We had to go to the active transportation program. And then from there, we had to reference SB 375, which is what this is. Two hops. And you'll notice how they talk about it. It's like, that's not in this bill. And you say, no, homeless housing, that's not in this bill. It's like, no, you're right. It's not in this bill. But it's subjugated to this bill that requires homeless housing.
Rebuilding certainly tough enough after
development, that kind of thing. It refers to financing. It's a voluntary financing program for transit-oriented development, that kind of thing. It refers a couple times to density. People saw that and they saw the authority and they thought, oh man, this is all about trying to increase density in the Palisades. That was never what was going on here with this bill.
Some Palisades residents.
Hey, here's a question. If that's not what's going on with this bill, why is it in the bill? Follow-up question. If that's not what's going on with this bill, why don't you just remove it from the bill? Why did you pull the bill entirely? I asked this question on the previous live stream. Why would you pull the entire bill? If there's just one clause that's getting people hung up and making people concerned, just remove that clause. Just remove it. If this bill is going to help your constituents like you say it is, and it's just this, it's just this one transit-oriented thing, well, then just get rid of that thing. But instead, they pull the entire bill. Why do you think that is? You don't think that's suspect? People are so disingenuous.
Also taken a stand against a different bill which could make it to Governor Newsom's desk by September. SB 79, authored by State Senator Scott Wiener, would ensure the state allows more housing.
Before we continue, Scott Wiener. What do we think about Wiener? This guy is infamous. For you guys who aren't aware of his record, the kinds of bills that this person puts out, things like you can give somebody HIV, you can infect somebody with HIV and not be held accountable if you do it deliberately. That's this guy. Let's see what he wants to do with the Palisades.
People saw that and they saw the authority and they thought, oh man, this is all about trying to increase density in the Palisades. That was never what was going on here with this bill.
Some Palisades residents have also taken a stand against a different bill which could make it to Governor Newsom's desk by September. SB 79, authored by State Senator Scott Wiener, would ensure the state allows more housing near the most frequented public transportation stops, addressing our housing crisis. Very high fire severity zones aren't excluded, But Pacific Palisades and Altadena aren't currently covered by the bill because they don't have the large public transportation hubs the bill addresses.
Just to interrupt, that's not true. That's not true. We addressed this in my previous live stream. What these transit bills that just happen to include mandatory housing stacked right next to mass transportation hubs, they're trying to act as if the Palisades does not have a qualifying public transportation hub. This is a lie. The bill talks about bus stops. The Palisades has bus stops.
What we're going to say is that you can't build housing anywhere where there might conceivably be a wildfire sometime. Okay, we can do that, but we're going to continue to push people out of the state because we're going to continue to have a house.
Do you see this? Do you see how they do this? They always dress it up in something else, and then they try to make you feel ashamed. Oh, we've got such a housing crisis in California that we need to quadruple the amount of housing in the footprint of the Palisades that we weren't going to do before, but now that it's been destroyed, we need to do that. I mean, do you want to see In-N-Out leave? Do you want to see more businesses leave? Well, it's because you won't let us build homeless housing in the Palisades. That's why. God, fine, guys. If you want that, then we'll keep losing In-N-Out. What else are we going to lose? These people are scumbags. This has nothing to do with the housing crisis. Just rebuild the fucking Palisades. Just rebuild what was there. Why are you trying to add more shit in the fucking footprint? Why are you trying to put 100 units on a Shell gas station? The fuck is wrong with these people? Now, Scott Wiener's bill, just like basically everything this guy produces in California, is maybe worse than the one that we covered in our previous live stream. Look at what the focus is. Transit-oriented housing development. Now, they're calling these transit-oriented housing development projects. Under this bill, a project, they want to build projects in the Palisades, by the way. A project under this section shall be eligible for a density bonus, incentives, or concessions, waivers, or reductions of development standards and parking ratios pursuant to section. They're giving a bonus for density. They are incentivizing density. Wiener's trying to jam this in the back door where they can waive any restrictions on development standards. Do you want to know what some of those development standards are? This gets really bad. Notwithstanding any other law, a transit-oriented housing development project that meets any of the eligibility criteria under subdivision A and is immediately adjacent to Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 transit-oriented development stop shall be eligible for an adjacency intensifier to increase the height limit by an additional 20 feet, the maximum density standard by an additional 40 dwelling units per acre, and the residential floor area ratio by 1. Do you understand this? So if you're close to a public transit stop, they're going to allow you to build 20 feet higher than you're allowed to build in the Palisades and add 40 additional dwelling units per acre. They are incentivizing higher density and higher building. They want to put high rises to block your view in the Palisades. They're not interested in rebuilding the Palisades. They want to build back better. What else does this disgusting Wiener bill say? The legislature, this is like the underpinning. This is the sort of spirit of what this bill is. The legislature finds and declares that the state faces a housing crisis of availability and affordability, in large part due to a severe shortage of housing. And solving the housing crisis, therefore, requires a multifaceted statewide approach, including, but not limited to, encouraging an increase in the overall supply of housing, encouraging the development of housing that is affordable to households at all income levels. That includes zero. When they say all income levels, they mean homeless drug addicts. Removing barriers to housing production. This is when they say, hey, this is going to cut red tape. This is what they mean. They don't mean you as a resident, you, Spencer Pratt, they're going to fast track you through the permitting process to rebuild your home up above the alphabet streets. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about cutting red tape for the scumbag developers who want to convert their existing commercial properties into high density housing. They're going to cut the red tape for that. Don't let them fool you. Removing barriers to housing production, expanding home ownership opportunities to homeless drug addicts, and expanding the availability of rental housing. And is a matter of statewide concern and is not a municipal affair. That term is used in Section 5 of Article 9 of the California Constitution. Therefore, the chapter applies to all cities. They want Gavin Newsom's problems. They want Gavin Newsom's shit. The way that he's grinding California into dust. They want that shit to roll downhill into the Palisades that just got knocked out by a wildfire. So there's a housing crisis in California. There's an affordability crisis in California because of bad policy, bad statewide policy, and they're just going to dump it on the Palisades and Altadena. Why? Because you never let a disaster go to waste. What else does this say? A housing development project shall be in allowed use as a transit-oriented housing development on any site. Oh my God. I'm going to start this again so I can get through this. A housing development project shall be in allowed use as a transit-oriented housing development on any site zoned for residential, mixed, or commercial development within 1/2 or 1/4 mile of a transit-oriented development stop, if the development complies with the applicable of all of the following requirements. Now check out these requirements. It must include at least 5 dwelling units, high density. A minimum density standard of at least 30 dwelling units per acre. The minimum density allowed under local zoning, if applicable. The average total area of floor space for the proposed units in the transit-oriented housing development shall not exceed 1,750 net habitable square feet. So they're trying to make sure that it stays small. Wow. Oh my God. Gets worse. A local government shall not impose any height limit less than 75 feet. What? So Scott Wiener doesn't want the Palisades to be able to impose a height limit on the buildings. The Palisades needs to let these high-density housing projects be at least 75 feet tall. A local government shall not impose any height limit less than 75 feet. And remember, they have that density bonus where you can bump that up another 20 feet if you have enough density. Additionally, a local government shall not impose any maximum density of less than 120 dwelling units per acre. Oh my God. 120. That's the minimum that you can pack into 1 acre on the Palisades. A local government shall not enforce any other local development standard or combination of standards that would prevent achieving a residential floor area ratio of up to 3.5. They're saying that the Palisades has to allow buildings over 75 feet tall. They cannot impose a height limit under 75 feet. And they must allow a minimum of 120 dwelling units per acre. This is so nefarious. This is even worse. Scott Wiener's bill is even worse. The reporting on this is absolutely shameful. Now, look at the way that ABC talks about this. One of the bills, SB 549, had to be paused after misinformation was spread on AI platforms. I love the passive voice. It was spread. Who did it? No idea. AI platforms? Dude, it was Spencer Pratt doing a fucking video, filming himself with a phone. Reality TV star and Palisades resident Spencer Pratt, who was among those who lost their... See, I'm editing their work in real time. Do you see that? It doesn't say who was among those that says, who is among those that lost their homes? Again, I understand professional writing degree. I shouldn't be nitpicking like this, but this just shows you how low the standards are for journalism. How do you get hired in a news agency and you don't say, Pratt, who they already used the right pronoun. Who was among those who lost their homes in the fire? Posted on TikTok. So they're blaming the pausing of SB 549 because Spencer Pratt did a TikTok video. Again, why would you pull the bill? If Spencer Pratt is wrong and this bill is going to help residents and it's not going to increase high density homeless housing, why would you pull it? Why would you pull it? You don't really care. That other language that was in the bill refers to financing. Yeah, we're talking about the money that Gavin Newsom is allocating towards the rebuilding effort. That's financing. It's a voluntary financing program for transit-oriented development, that type of thing. Dude, these people are scum. That's never what was going on in this bill. Those were separate parts of the bill. Wait. So is it a part of this bill or is it not a part of the bill? There's nothing in the bill about zoning and upzoning. No, there's not. There's a reference to SB 375, which does reference upzoning and increasing high density housing around transit-oriented development. So when he continues to say, oh, this is a transit thing, the transit thing requires a housing element. Very high fire severity zones aren't excluded. Dude, Scott Wiener, this guy. So again, remember his quote where he said, if what we're going to say is you can't build housing anywhere near where there might be conceivably a wildfire sometime, dude, the smugness of these people, where there might conceivably be a wildfire sometime, dude, the Palisades and Malibu is quite literally the wildfire capital of the world. They get devastating wildfires like clockwork every 25 years, right? In 1993, Sean Penn lost his home along with hundreds of other people on the Topanga fire that burned through Malibu. And then it happened 25 years later, 2018, when the Woolsey fire did the exact same thing. And then adjacent to the Woolsey fire, we now have the Palisades fire. And adjacent to that, we're going to have the old Topanga fire coming up probably this year. This is not, oh, maybe conceivably we have wildfires here. Dude, this is the wildfire capital of the world. And you want to pack more people in an area that was such a clusterfuck to evacuate to begin with. And all of those people had cars. So now what are you going to have people do? Running from their projects? So you're going to have people trying to get down from the 50th floor of the no maximum height project that you want to build. And they're just going to walk out of the fire zone. That's what we're doing. I'm curious what you guys think of these people. This is the laziest, most irresponsible journalism surrounding this topic. And the only thing I can conclude is that this corporate media is they're just supplicant media doing the bidding for power, right? Whatever you think about Scott Wiener, he's a very powerful figure in California politics, inexplicably. I don't know why. This is unbelievable. If what you're going to say is we can't build housing anywhere where there might be conceivably a wildfire sometime. These people are so smug and disingenuous. Just rebuild the fucking Palisades. Just rebuild the homes in their existing footprint. Make them out of better materials and take care of Topanga State Park. Clear the fucking brush. That's all you have to do. Man, these people are scumbags. These people are such scumbags. Anyway, I'm curious what you guys think. Let me see. You guys in the chat. Nobody's in the chat. So it's just me screaming into the void. Me and Spencer Pratt screaming into the void. Dude, it's just the same smear. Same smear is just like the old smear. They're just going to lie. You guys in the Palisades need to rally around Spencer. I know there are other people talking about this, but he's like the only one who is out front and being loud and obnoxious about this. And that's what you need to be. You need to be loud and obnoxious. As you can see, not only do your representatives not give half of a fuck about you, they are legally required to build high density housing projects in the Palisades. Now that the Etch-a-Sketch has been shaken clean, they have to do this. And they're going to continue gaslighting you the way that they did in this article. And in that video segment that we watched, they're going to continue gaslighting you because they don't care about you. They hate you. They hate you. There's no other conclusion to draw. So you guys need to be obnoxious about this. Otherwise, you're going to get steamrolled. And the Palisades is going to be totally converted into just wizard projects. This is unbelievable to watch unfold in real time. By the way, who's buying up these properties in Altadena and the Palisades? Some of these properties are on sale and they're selling. They're selling for millions of dollars. Who's buying them? Go ahead and look into that. Take care, guys.